Alright, so for this tutorial, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be going over different lighting styles using a shoot-through umbrella. And this is just a simple rig that I built with a monopod with a flash bracket mounted to it. We're going to put the 8200 in there, shooting through this collapsible trifold umbrella. And on top of the camera, we're running with that X1T trigger with the Godox V1 flash with a MagSphere on top. That's going to allow us to light that foreground as we do our multiple flash pops in the room. We're going to be doing a couple different demonstrations. One using just the umbrella, shooting it into the room, seeing if that gives us enough light. And then we're going to be doing the same thing with just turning on the Godox V1 on the camera and the shoot-through umbrella. And then we're going to also be using the umbrella to do composites. And we're going to also see if shooting towards the wall and bouncing that flash back into the wall has a different effect as opposed to just turning the umbrella around and shooting straight into the room doing our two composites. But let's get into Lightroom right now, and I'm going to show you how we edit these and see if we can see any difference in the results that we get. Alright, so here we are in Lightroom, and this is what our ambient layer looks like. Before we do any bumps, this was straight out of camera, and it was pretty dark. And again, I go with lights off in most situations when I can. So this has plenty of natural light coming in, but you notice we were at 2-second shutter on this at f5.4. It's 16 millimeters. So what we're going to do is we're going to do my initial bump right here. And again, these are just starting points. I'm trying to tweak these. So the one thing that I have changed up in my workflow is going to Adobe Neutral as opposed to Adobe Standard, because it gives you a little bit of a flatter image to start. So Adobe Standard, it's going to be Adobe Color by default. So you come down here to Browse and then choose Adobe Neutral. That's up to you. I always punch the contrast and everything after. I just feel like I like to work with a flatter image to begin with. And I'm going to just copy these settings really quick. I have my presets here, but again, I like to personally use my preset initially and then just copy those because every single listing is going to be different slightly. And that way all you have to do is come over to the paste here and paste those settings in. Alright, so let's look at what it looks like with... Okay, so this is our just the umbrella, not the flash on top. And again, if we paste our settings in, it's a little too dark. So then I bumped the flash power up again. And I did some more experience. Let me see. Paste those settings in. And we'd have to drive that exposure up still. But we have the flash in the window. And we'd have to do a repair layer. And so that's where I moved the flash over to this side of the room and shot this way so we didn't get that glare. We paste our settings in. Bring that exposure up a little bit more. Could bring those blacks down. Maybe drop those shadows to give it some more contrast. Play around with that. So this is one scenario. So I guess, you know what? Let's go ahead and edit this one. We'll take both of these, all three of these, into Photoshop by right-clicking, edit in, open as layers in Photoshop. So now that the layers have been loaded up into Photoshop, what I like to do is just start with turning the ambient layer off for now. Let's do that. Let's just make sure that we have the flash layer. And again, remember, this is just the umbrella flash going off. The 8200 about a quarter power into the room. And you can see that it did create a shadow. There is a ceiling fan there. Slight shadow. So doing a 50-50 blend like I show in my other tutorials might not happen because we might not be able to soften that shadow enough. And then we have our repair layer, and that shadow just shifted to this side, which is okay because we could use this layer to get rid of that shadow in our flash. But let's turn the ambient layer back on because we are going to do the 50-50 blend on this one. And let's put it at 50%. And then we can take and just do a layer mask. Don't invert it. Black needs to be selected. And we're just going to paint back in that window view. And again, don't worry about that flash layer. We can paint this window too. I'm using left and right brackets to make my brush bigger or smaller. That's on the right side of your keyboard. Should be to the right of the key, the letter P. And then we can brush out that shadow right there. Oh wait, no, we're brushing it in. Sorry. That's okay. We're going to be able to take this one now and move this one all the way to the top. do a complete layer and then Command I to invert it. White is selected now, and then we can brush out that umbrella reflection out of the window, and then we can brush out the shadow from that ceiling fan. So regardless, here's a tip. Regardless that if you don't get a reflection in the window, watch your shadows if you have ceiling fans and just move your flash and make another flash pop so you can mask out the flash shadows from that ceiling fan or anything else in the room, like a chandelier or something. So there we go. Let's just right click and flatten image, and we're going to Command S to save it. We're going to bring this one back into Lightroom, and I'm going to do my interior final bump on this one. Bring that exposure down a little bit, bring my blacks down even more. So we're going to take our final image. We'll just sit here and flag that because we'll come back and compare these. And let's move on. Let's see. This is just a sample, a demo. This is me testing out the Godox V1 on top of the camera to see where my power needs to be. And so this is it. This is good enough. It's lighting that foreground enough. So then we come into the room and we're going to just reverse that flash to bounce it into the umbrella and then back out. And let's see what that looks like with our initial bump. We can bring that exposure up. Let's go to this side of the room now. Paste that in. Bring that exposure up. So I probably could have gone with more flash power. I was already at, I believe, a quarter power on this. So this might not be an efficient way to do this. But we will do the other way, where we shoot into the room like that in our next example. So let's just edit this one. Let's highlight both these. And we got to come back to our ambient layer. And then right click, edit in, open as layers in Photoshop. Okay, now that these layers are loaded in, now whenever you have multiple flash pops on either side like this, I like to work with those first. So let's shut our ambient layer off. Let's do a complete layer mask, Command I to invert it. And now I like to use my gradient tool, start right in front of the farthest spot, and we're just going to sit here and pull this somewhere over into the middle. And there we go. That is the simplest way to blend these two images together. And what I'm noticing now is if we look at our ambient layer, we have a lot of shadows right here. So here's something that we can test. We can drop that opacity to 50%. And it still doesn't really get rid of those shadows. So we're going to have to manually brush this in, which is fine. We're going to have to do a complete layer mask, Command I to invert it. White is selected. Right bracket to make that bigger and left to make it smaller. And now we can sit here and paint out our shadows. And paint back in ambient where we need it. Gives you a little bit more control doing it this way. You know, natural glare on certain things. And notice my flow for this brush is only at 6% right here. That allows you to be very methodical. Might take a little bit longer, but that way you're not having to go back over it if you put too much ambient in. You know, like if you have really harsh glare on, you know, the floor or this table, for example. But again, this is why I run with circular polarizer, because it really helps eliminate that glare. Because you're going to want to put ambient back into the image to make it look natural if you're, like I'd say, if you like to do the lights off method like I teach. See, now I want to switch this to black and paint out some of that reflection in this. Like that. And there you go. Those shadows are blended. We're good. Let's right click. Flatten image, and Command S to save it, and then we'll do our interior final bump right there. Bring that down, maybe drop those blacks a little bit more, and we will flag this one. Let's do our little comparison here. Where's our other flag? Drop it up into here. And those two look very similar. I'm not sure if it's because we got more contrast We could probably drop the blacks on the right one here. So the left one here was when we did just the shoot through umbrella into the room, and then this one was where we did our flash pops on either side. Looking like you're getting similar results. So again, I would probably go with just shooting an umbrella into the room if the room isn't that big. Now, if you have a really deep, long room, or if it's really dark and you need more flash power, obviously you probably want to go with the composite side-to-side shot like I did here in this right example. But again, you always have the opportunity to look at your camera in the back of the screen and see what the results are before you move on. So, okay, now we have to go to our third example, which is shooting into the room like this. I believe that's what it was. Let's see. Yeah, because then I'm going to do the demo where we do just, no umbrella, just bouncing the flash off the ceiling. So let's take this first example, paste in our settings here, increase that exposure like that, and paste our settings in on this one. So now you can see that a lot better, where I'm just lighting this side now by literally shooting that flash inside the room. All right, let's highlight this one, highlight our ambient shot, right click, and open as layers in Photoshop. And again, let's shut our ambient layer off. Let's highlight that first flash layer and do a layer mask, Command I to invert. Gradient tool, make sure white is selected. And again, here is the umbrella edge. We want to start right up there and drag somewhere over here. Look at that. That looks actually a lot nicer than when we did the bounce flash, I think. So let's turn our ambient layer back on, and we're not going to be able to do that 50% because that introduces too many shadows. So we're going to have to do a complete layer mask, Command I to invert it, get our brush tool, and start painting out those shadows, bringing that ambient light back in at a 6% at a time here, which is okay. Because remember, it's only certain rooms typically that you're going to have to spend more time on than others. It's usually your open floor plans, your pretty much the whole downstairs, of a house, where, bedrooms, typically I just either bounce the flash off the ceiling if it's a white ceiling and do a quick 50-50 blend with that flash ambient. And let's, paint back out that glare of this china cabinet here. And let's right click, flatten image, Command S to save it, back into Lightroom. Here we go. Let's do our interior final bump. Give it a little more contrast right there. Flag it. And let's do a comparison now. Let's see, which one do we want to compare it with? Yeah, the bouncing back and forth. Okay, and again, you just gotta, if we match it, almost identical. To me, it looks identical. So again, this one on the left was when we bounced the flash against the wall and then back into the room. And this one here to the right was when we just threw the flash into the room. I believe I used the same flash power for both of these. So I don't know if I can get that to match even more. And again, these are subtle differences. I don't think there's anything too distinctively different about either one of these methods. Just whatever works for the situation, I guess. All right, so now we can take a look and see when we bounce the flash from the ceiling. So we are using the flash on top of the camera as well. Let's paste our settings in. And you can tell that, and I believe I was still at quarter power on this one, on the Godox 8200 here. It's not lighting it as well, that's for sure. That's good to know. So maybe using the umbrella is actually going to be more efficient. Let's see what the results are. Let's highlight these two flash pops on our ambient layer and edit in, open as layers in Photoshop. I mean, that's the thing. I used to run with the umbrella, the shoot-through umbrella, on every listing. It didn't matter if it was white ceilings or not. I would just pop my flash, and just the umbrella flash, not a flash on top of the camera. That's something that I just started doing last year. And the reason why is because if you run with a flash on top of the camera, you can light up multiple rooms, and you always know that you got a light back at the camera, as opposed to using a separate light stand and moving that light stand You become the light stand. And then you have a tripod and light stand all in one with your flash on top of the camera. That's why I've really switched to going with that method. But we could just be mobile with our monopod flash bracket setup too. So if it takes you a little bit longer but the results are better, that's more important. So let's shut our ambient layer off. Let's highlight the first one, do a layer mask, Command I to invert. Get over here to our gradient tool, pull that somewhere over into the center. And to me already I can tell that it just doesn't seem like enough light. But with that being said, it does allow us to blend that a little bit more effectively. But for the sake of this, since we're going to do it the same way, Command I, we're going to paint back in ambient light, getting rid of that natural shine from that flash, introducing natural light back in, and getting rid of those shadows on either side of that curtain. Getting that natural light to come back in off the floor and on the table. And I want to do the same thing. Paint back in that flash reflection to maybe hide some of that glare on that glass. The other thing too to remember is if you do have curtains in a window, make sure you're brushing back in a little bit of that ambient light to let that light shine through like this. It'll just give it that much more of a natural daylight look that we all want. I want. I love the natural look. Okay, let's flatten this image, bring it back into Lightroom, and see what the difference is. Command S to save it. Alright, let's do our interior final bump here. Bring that down. Let's compare it to this. Wow. Very similar. Interesting. Well, what ends up being faster? So the nice thing about running with the umbrella flash bracket setup is if you're in a house and you're already using the umbrella and you come across a room that has dark ceilings, you don't have to run all the way back downstairs or whatever and grab your umbrella. You just have it right there ready to go. So that's one option. And a lot of times, like I said, in a room where you only need one flash pop, all you need to do is bring that umbrella into the room and shoot that flash. Now, the other issue that I have, learned over time is that you will tend to get more of a glare in a window, so you're going to end up having to do repair layers, whereas if you do just a flash pop on the ceiling, you can typically hide. You're not going to get the flash glare in that window, so that'll save you an extra step. So that's all stuff to think about. But on the other hand, too, is if you want to run the flash bracket without the umbrella, you're able to reach that monopod up over the camera and get that flash pop into the room farther. That's going to allow you for more even light spread, too. And that's what I was using it for. So you don't always have to use the umbrella. You could have the umbrella in your back pocket just in case you come across a room that has dark ceilings. If this helped you, make sure you hit that subscribe button. I'm releasing tutorials and I'm testing different things all the time. I'm trying to help you as a beginner photographer get into the real estate photography business in the easiest way possible with the best results. So if you want to see a more in-depth tutorial, check out this video right here, and we'll see you in the next video, guys. Bye-bye.